pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I ask that you would bless them, that you would inspire them, that you would give them the wisdom that they need.
Welcome, is that okay?
That's okay.
To the new room. I hope you can all hear us.
District 4, Nancy Oben. Please step forward. District 4, Nancy Oben. Please step forward. Please step forward.
And Supervisor Nancy. Chance to raise it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes, we're. Yes, we're.
Ready when you are. Ready? Are you ready? Okay. I get to use the gavel. We're back in session. Welcome, everybody. This is a pleasure for me to get to do this, so bear with me. We're going to move on to item 6, presentations from the public. This time slot is for the information from the public. No action or discussion will be conducted on matters presented at this time. You will be allowed 3 minutes for your presentation. Written comments can be presented, if so desired, by providing a minimum of 7 copies to the clerk. When addressing the board, please state your name for the record prior to providing your comments, and if you don't do that, we'll remind you. Please address the board as a whole through the chair. Comments should be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the board. I have one blue card from Angela Davis, CAO.
Good morning, Chair Okren, members of the board, Angela Davis, County Administrator. Before you today, I would like to present to some and introduce to others Mr. Jeff Collins. If you'd like to come forward, please, Mr. Collins. He is the newly appointed Director of Information Technology, and as you are aware, we are now direct service with our IT department is in-house with county employees that they're doing, and extremely excited of what the future holds. So I wanted to introduce to you Mr. Jeff Collins. So if you'd like to have words.
Nice to meet all of you today.
Welcome.
Good morning. Is that anything?
I believe we've met before. You know my.
To address that, working on that on a daily basis to make sure we're secure and protected, as you see in the news.
Vice Chair on the Information Technology Committee for the National, and there is a meeting that doesn't go by where cybersecurity is not mentioned.
Oh yeah, it's ransomware today, as you've seen multi-billion-dollar companies being security budgets, and when they're not being right either, so it's a lot of work, and make sure that we're secure.
Just know that I'll be in constant contact with you just to know where we are at any moment in time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Moving on to consent agenda, item 7.
And nothing was pulled, correct? All righty, Supervisor Valenzuela.
Yep.
Supervisor Thompson.
Aye.
And Supervisor Ogren.
Aye. Moving on to Department A, Community Development. Presentation of 2024 year-end updates for.
Wow. Happy New Year. It's Stan Norton. One power communication, please. Say that for all of us, I think. Personally, this has been the most challenging year in my career at the county. Before I jump into the overview, our team and family that we have there, and I think you can share that pride also. And it's on the foot, get up, suck it up. You know, I think more this year, just the our work life. Right out the gate, January, code enforcement Ottenberg get. So it wasn't until May that we actually got him. Meg is the heart. She's our office manager. Made sure that everything's attended to today. That was just one big challenge that we had. February, been cramped in space for almost a year now. Getting to know each other quite well, so to speak. As usual, carrying on and getting the job done for us. Shaylin Dewey, that all passed her forward, so we have one remaining staff to get that goal done. So that's been a battle for quite a time. Very proud of the staff, stepped up, got her, so forth. Just all in all, very proud of our team for what they do internally with life and so forth. Crazy things go on, continue, right? One of our staff, we do the rabies program, of course, right? So we're waiting for the bike card to come, but wanted to see what. Andrew Fox just last week, so fell, broke her ankle. So anyway, life is life, life goes on, it overlaps with the whole thing that we have. So perseverance of our team that we have, and I think you can be proud of them as well. Now we can move on to the financial business that we have. Go to the next slide, please. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail with this, but I'm going to go through each of our divisions, give you a picture financially where we're at. This first slide is basically, this is all basically relative, and also the planning division, subsidized, so to speak, by the general fund. Building, it's 35% subsidized. Fees take care of the remaining 65%. And just want to throw out there, as you know, it's been kind of the battle getting to where we are. Service of the public, right? So we did not want to back off on staff, right? We just wanted to get to a point where now things 2 weeks out the door. So it's been used for us internally, but also for the public. So what we did to accomplish that 5% is we unfroze the ICC department portion of this fee structure. We kind of built that. Moving on to environmental health. Next slide, please. Fund, it's funded by fees and also realignment dollars, expenditures, revenues. Next slide, please. This is basically the last 6 years as far as the alignment that goes to our department. So in general, right now, I would just say that to fully staff our team. Pre-2000, 9 staff plus a director. Currently, we're at 5 staff and a director with twice the workload. Environmental health is prior to 2008 with nearly half the staff. So this is one area that. Okay, next slide, please. And this is a reference here. Fee coverage versus realignment dollars, or you can see the graphs. Okay. Planning division. Planning is most affected by the general fund. Basically, next slide, please. There has been a reduction in percentage of general fund contribution, and basically to meet the goals for the 5% reduction, we eliminated the CDBG program manager position to accomplish that. So I'll just say that you know, across the board, and this is all up to your decision and discretion and direction, but planning have not been fully addressed since 2011. And I know we've had conversations about take a look at that, and that's your direction, we'll move forward with it. But the percentage has been 10% over last year, so that's where we're at basically with financial picture of community development. And in environmental health, to more details on the divisions. Go ahead and hand this out, Phil, just as a preemptive for Mr. Shopkins' presentation. Okay. I'd like to introduce Ms. Haley Lang with the planning department.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Planning Director Haley Lang. Next slide. So as the Planning Director, I oversee 2 divisions, the Planning Division and the Code Enforcement Divisions. And so currently on staff, we have 2 senior planners, an associate planner, a planning permit technician, and a planning commission secretary. On the code enforcement side, we have a code enforcement supervisor, 2 code enforcement officers, and a code enforcement analyst currently. Next slide. For the planning divisions, you can think of the main duties being either current planning or long-range planning activities. And so current planning activities that we conduct, include development projects on private property, right? Use permit, zone changes, boundary line adjustments, Williamson Act, those types of projects would be current planning. Our long-range planning activities include update to things such as the general plan, zoning ordinances, and other programs and policies to help the development, within the long game of Siskiyou County. Next slide. In 2024, this is somewhat a little bit less than in the past. We normally were averaging at about 100, but projects that are taking a little bit more time to get out. For example, CEQA that staff is working on, or drilling down project descriptions with the applicants, or dealing with some other project issues related to that. As commonly in the past, most of our applications are related to boundary line adjustments, ag preserves, considering program and use permits. Code enforcement. So our code enforcement team is always super. They always handle a lot of cases, and so just to summarize, there were 7 land use cases, 31 planning cases, 241 building cases, 12 hazardous waste cases, and 165 cannabis cases. Next slide. There were a lot of big projects that we worked on, one of them being the vacation rental ordinance update. I know over that, and so that is something that we completed in 2024. We also adopted the housing element. We continued working on the 2050 general plan update, so that's scheduled to be complete and adopted in 2026. And then we began working with JH Ranch and their plan development project. So that's in the queue. And some. Next slide. So we have 445 total contracts within the county. 70 are multi-owner contracts, and a total of 414,000 acres are under contract. There were 13 contract amendments totaling at about $15,275 in fees. 19 were processed and approved. 2 are currently on hold with issues they need, boundary line adjustments, and 2 are still in process. 8,853 acres were issued a notice of non-renewal, and 230 acres were added into existing contracts. Next slide. So our SMARA program, our Surface and Mine Reclamation Act mining program, also a really comprehensive program within our division. We currently have 25 mine sites. 1 was abandoned and required county closure. 2 are in process of reclamation. 3 new sites are in process, and there are 3 proposed amendments or expansions that we are currently working on. And the annual fees billed is about $35,000. Next slide. Well, we have one more slide left, so I will just summarize that verbally. And so I was going to discuss what our 2025 focuses are this year. There it is. As I mentioned, the JH Ranch plan development, we're working on that with the applicants, and so I'm hoping to take that to actually Planning Commission in February or March. Still working on the general plan update, and I'm going to continue staff training, and I will be studying for the AICP certification, it's a planner certification. So need many years of experience and education to get that done, so I'm finally ready for that and have some time. And then last, we're going to be working on updating required ordinances specifically for our housing element implementation. We have a slew of things that we're mandated to update within our zoning code related to housing, so you'll be seeing a package of that in the next few months for adoption. So other than that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes. Through the chair, thank you. With regard to the SMARA program and the permitting, it's $1,400 a year. Have we gone up from, were we lower than that? I know we started out high and we were able to bring it back, but is it creeping up again?
It's not creeping up again. Rick and I were actually looking at this the other day, and it seems like in 2016 we had a fee schedule update specific to SMARA amendments at the 1,400. So that's what we're currently working with, but we have no intention right now, at least, to increase those fees.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Yep.
So the Williamson Act, I know that's far longer process, but I thought it was going to take how long before you get to status?
Bernadette's done an amazing job, obviously, focusing on this. considering we have, 70 multi-owner contracts, and that we survey every other year, I would assume maybe the next, probably 3 or 4 years is, you'd see a huge decrease in that multi-owner contract, because that's kind of when we get the information, right, is with the voluntary surveys, so we can start working with folks and contacting folks. And that's how we've been managing the program, unless of course there's like a code enforcement violation or someone calls or there's concerns or they're working on another development project, then we'll kind of handle the Williamson Act issues with that. But that's what I foresee as it being,
Sure.
kind of drilled
So
down.
we had some that we, non-compliance and those kind of things, are we able to quantify what that is gonna do? Because that would be an
Go
increase
back
in
to
general
that
fund.
one slide with the acreage, that tells a
Mhm.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so, let's see here.
it was 8,800 acres, that's gonna be,
Yeah, so, just north of 8,000, almost 9,000, we're non-renewals, right? So that's a long process as well, right?
Sure.
It's a 9-year process, so, folks have, 9 years either to program or after that, with the incremental taxes that occur over the 9 years, is that's when it would be back in kind of general.
but we're not
taxing.
able to quantify that at this time, I mean, that's probably into the minutia of what.
Yeah, right, and we have to work with the assessor's office, and
Okay.
we totally could get you that number, but yeah, that's not something.
I think it's really making sure people are compliant,
Yeah,
from my perspective.
yeah, of course.
Supervisor Hal?
Can you give me some sense of timing for the J transfer processing?
Yes, so they submitted a plan development, so that's because they have a, plan development zoning, and so how our code works is they have to do a zone change in addition with a use permit, similar to Mount Shasta, how that kind of function worked, because it's a large project and there's multiple different activities occurring, that's why those both tandem applications are being processed. I've been obviously working on the project and working with, Kip and Rob from JH, and so I'm planning to take it to Planning Commission. I'm hoping for February, if not March, and so depending on how that goes, with approvals and things like that, then, the board would see it shortly thereafter. I will say, the intent of these, applications is to bring the property into compliance. There's nothing being expanded, no new occupancy, so it's really just to create baseline of what's been occurring, to formalize that, so we are able to work with them on potential expansion in the future.
What CEQA process are we looking at?
So for this, because it's baseline, we're looking at a categorical exemption. So, because there's nothing new being proposed, it's just, a compliance thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Supervisor Harris? Can you give us a quick update on the general plan? How's that moving along?
Yeah, so moving along just fine. As you are all involved in the joint meeting regarding the visioning and guiding principles, we took that back as staff, and took that input and feedback, brought that forward through the internal tag for the revised visioning and guiding principles. That's going to be discussed at the January Planning Commission meeting this month, and then that recommendation will be moving forward to the board in February. And then after that, the next kind of main focus would be zoning code updates and the actual preparation of the elements. And so, after the vision and guiding principles approval, which I'm slated to happen, occur in February, that would kind of be the next step for the project.
Is there more public outreach going to happen with that? Are there more public meetings?
Yes, there definitely is going to be more public meetings. We have nothing scheduled yet, but also during this process, we're going to be beginning the notice of preparation process for the EIR, so that's very, very involved with the public, and so that's probably what we'll see next in terms of scheduled public hearings and public meetings to get the public's input on that piece.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning, Board and Chair Ogren. I'm Glenn Shaughnessy, Deputy Director of Building. Here to the Building Department. Next slide, please. Currently, Building Department has 5 full-time employees Deputy Director of Building, Building Plans Examiner, Building Inspector 3 and 2, Building Inspector 2, all of which are ICC certified inspectors. We have one extra help retiree that fills in the gaps on some specialized projects that we have. And we are currently engaged in retaining this established staff so that we can continue to provide this service to the county. Next slide, please. Just go over briefly the department task, plan review and approval of current code compliance, permit issuance of reviewed projects, inspection of permitted construction projects throughout the county, answer code and permitting related questions to the public, provide technical input on various high-profile issues throughout the county, which include ongoing fire rebuild efforts, the dam removal project, which is thankfully winding down. We're mostly dealing with res, assist code of how many fees we've collected in the building department. I just want last year and this year, which I remember Supervisor Cobsup had asked me department during that trying year, but I'm happy to say it's only a $49,000 difference. Permits issued, we are actually, or the valuation is $23,583,000 compared to last year, which was $27,047,000. Mostly because last year we had a lot of commercial projects. I think you're aware of Fish Hatchery, SPI, just to name a few, so we didn't have that. This year was 542 compared to last year of 331, so we actually issued more permits, and the inspections on that are lagging. So 2024 we did 3,421, 2023. This is just a quick slide to show has waived due to the fires in the county. That's time to drive down to the different sites or vehicles and gas that are associated with that. So that's purely a dollar count of permits waived. And I mean, building, we have permits that are ready to be issued that aren't picked up. So permit value is approximately $41,000, please. And we're going to go through some permitting totals. 30 issued and 30 have been final. Residential alterations, 304 total. 67 submitted, 65 submitted, 19 issued, and next slide, please. Electrical service. Issued and 84 final. ADUs, new and conversions, total of 8. 4. And down at the bottom is where I've listed projects that expired, but we issued permits to complete based on the expired permits. So in that we've issued 27 that kept going. Next slide, please. As Rick mentioned, we have ongoing challenges with being displaced because of the arson fire, trying to locate old documents to allow people to complete it back into their homes. Next slide, please. Goals for 20 pre-approved plans. Next slide, please. Plans that will be final. Valley, I believe, right?
Correct, yes.
So we're kind of proud of that. One's built. Shortly. Questions?
Through the chair. So a while back, And I know when you say week turnaround for permitting, what's the line between, I guess, when someone first brings in everything? Is there a lag time there that keeps that 2-week window?
Really, there isn't. We get it in, goes through planning, we triage it. A couple of us look at it and say, let's fast track this one forward. It looks like everything's here. We can get it. And then we'll let people know during the process, hey, can you get us this upgrade?
Can it get, it's in 2020 that may, I'm just going to use that as an application that may still be en route because of not having X, Y, or Z. Do they get
They submitted under.
okay?
That's the one we check it out. Yeah, we do those and they went on them. It just goes, whatever permit we go by.
Okay, thank you.
Projection going forward, I think last time I spoke with Rick Dean, the Slater building had kind of crested. We maybe where are we with McKinney going forward? We anticipate.
I haven't seen a lot submitted on McKinney, so I'm not sure what the situation is there with people getting permits in. I don't know if what they're waiting for on it.
I know with Slater there was a 2-year lag time with the insurance.
Correct.
Anyway, I'm just trying to live what workload's on the and
But as
how
usual,
that might affect the permit time.
as usual with all the fires, we expedite the fire projects.
Okay.
So we put them at the front of the line and try to get them back into their residences as soon as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I also that are trying to conduct business outside.
Well, just real quick, 2 weeks seems pretty. I don't have too much confidence. I don't think we've ever been that way.
Right.
So kudos to you on that.
Thank you. Thank CAO and all of you for your support in that. Getting it done.
How many inspectors do you have out actually inspecting projects?
We have three that are full-time inspectors, and then the rest of us can fill in as needed. So I was out there before, I used to do it, and our plan checker, so all of us can go out and do it as needed.
And what's the time frame on an inspection when a property owner, project owner calls and says they're ready for an inspection? Are there cycles that you go out on and?
So it's based on the days. We have routes that we do, so certain routes are on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, other ones are Tuesday, Thursday. And if they call in their inspection by 7 o'clock, we get to it, 7 a.m., we get to it that day. So we
So
can
there's really no
service it
lag
quick.
time.
There is no lag time
Great.
there. Yeah.
Great, well, we all appreciate the work that you've done to make sure this rest over the last few years. We know that there's been some issues, and we really appreciate the work that your department's put in. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no, Rick's coming back.
Good evening. Mr. Wessel has a previous commitment and be able to be here to represent environmental health, so I am filling in for that. Just to back up before I proceed, Supervisor House question from the Slater fire and so forth. Long process, it's been over 4 years now, and there's been 43 homes rebuilt out of 265 lost. Not great numbers. That said, McKinney, we've had 3. Settlements are starting to come in with McKinney fire now, so expecting to get an uptick there with McKinney rebuild too. So, yeah, long time to heal from these fires. Okay, environmental health. Kind of touched on this earlier with the staffing levels. really, environmental health has hit the hardest, again, from unfunded mandates and so forth in a workload, and our staffing levels are 65% what they were historically. Needs to be fixed. Let's just say that. Next slide, please. We're here to answer those for you. Next slide, please. 163. We have 71 food facilities, restaurants that is, 161 temporary folks that go out and do portion of events, and et cetera, et cetera. CFO, Scottish Food Operations, we have 39 of those that we inspect, 53 events. That's probably the largest thing that's grown over the years within our county are the events that we have. And we try to get more attention on them. Obviously, there's large populations that serve at those. There's a higher potential for things to go wrong. And staff has done a good job picking that up and actually committed to going out there on weekends and dealing with inspections and trying to make sure that we're in good standing with those. Pools and spas, 47, bodyguard, and we also do police inspections and so forth. Next slide, please. CUPA program, what does that stand for? Certified Unified Program Agency. Makes absolutely no sense. Doesn't tell you exactly what it is at all. Not even clear. Another acronym developed by the state of California. Thank you very much. Within the waste management unit program, cover the landfills, emergency response, fire cleanups, illegal cannabis cultivation, etc. I want to give a little shout out to Shannon Vanilla this year. We were tasked with cleaning up the head fire, which was a learning experience for certain. This was the first fire that the state basically put on the owners of the county to fulfill. And it'd be nice to say it was all great and everything. Still very expensive to do because we're within the parameters of the state in order to get reimbursed by the state. So we still have to use the same 210-page contracts and so forth to get folks on board to do the work. Big learning curve there for myself and team to try to work through those contracts. And thank you very much for helping us do that, Angela Davis. Because did not meet the time frame that I expected things to happen with. Once we did get everything in line, it went pretty good job dealing with the personalities on the ground, and we're trying to work through this process with them. So, next slide, please. 400. A lot of this is due all over the place, right? Associated with hazards, battery backup, power backup. So that's increased our inspection load quite a bit there for that. 25 emergency responses this year. We haven't had any big events, right? Most of these have been diesel spills, trucks, these things have been easily managed. 10 hours, folks that are on the big rigs, let's go, and more cognizance with materials they're handling. So just over the last 20 years, been a huge improvement and reduction in our need. Head fire cleanup, we had about 350 hours committed to that this year. Support with pesticides and so forth, the Sheriff's Department, code enforcement. Land use, obviously on some septic wells, water systems. Okay. Welcoming 119 versus 98 last year. We have 41 water systems that we sample quarterly and put them under the state purview, which currently our fees are about 200.
That's the
Yeah.
guess.
No, it'll go to the consumer and.
Is it law or is it just agency driven?
It's agency driven. I can see, yeah, Modoc is the first county that's getting hit right now, and they're knocking on our door. So, where that goes. In closing, this subject, I just want to say, planning a fabulous job there. James Philp is doing awesome for us, both supporting planning and code enforcement and every other little thing that bring in mind. Very sound planning vision now. I think from my perspective, the work has been for the last 30 years is the healthiest that it has been. Building department, as you know, Sean can see his team. Sean, we've got Seth doing plan checking. As always, but great improvement, very solid there with the building. Environmental health needs to be shored up. We have difficulty hitting our fires, cannabis, all the other unfunded mandates that keep piling onto that division. And need to have that shored up, quite frankly. If I had one wish, and I know we've been working on this hard, is to somehow get support, county council, half-time position in code enforcement. Historically, and this is prior to the cannabis, right? We have difficulty with camping primarily, and egregious sites where we go out enforcement, we have our process, citations, and get to nowhere, get to an end where we're not getting cooperation. And we need to have follow through with civil action. It hasn't happened historically. And it's something I think that the department and code enforcement would be a good investment for you to have in place. All in all, grateful for this year. It's been a disaster, but we still have Schauenberg standing. We still have Lewis standing. Easy as we get our age, our parents start going sideways, have all kinds of things to deal with there that detracts from. I'm just very pleased and grateful, privileged to have the status that it is in.
Thank you, sir.
No question.
I wanted to make a comment. I work with your department, your staff, more than any in the county. And the citizens get more than their money's worth out of your department. You're always responsive, your staff are responsive, they're always timely getting back to me. I know you take a lot of flack from the public because it affects people's personal lives. But truly the professionalism in your department is admirable. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would reiterate that and say that every time that I call, I get nothing but a quick response, or as quick as you can. And that's directed at Haley. And you actually care. You really, really care about your community and the work that you put in, and your family / team really genuinely cares about the work you do and the community you live in. And I really appreciate that. And I think your community does too. So thank you for what you do. Moving on. 8B, County Administration discussion and possible direction regarding specific level of county assistance to incorporated and unincorporated jurisdictions with regard to warming and or cooling shelters in various areas of the county.
Good morning, Chair Ogren, Angela Davis, County Administrator. As we are all very much aware, Siskiyou County has weather events throughout the year. And with those weather events, there may be a request from incorporated cities from the county to assist with implementing warming or cooling centers. And so, responsibility, and if we were to receive a request, we have not received one request for the unincorporated areas, but if we were, we would be requesting the county to assist from a location to staffing, to supplies, to building up, and then for county staff, so that we understand exactly what the pleasure of the board is when it comes to Warming and Noni, who's the Director of Emergency Services, and Sarah Collard, who is the Director of Health and Human. Literally, specifically Ms. Cervelli. So if there are any specific questions that you have, as I stated, I'm just seeking direction from the board so that we can have clarity moving forward.
So, I get the unincorporated part.
Correct.
But give me, I guess, a backdrop of what we've done for the cities in the past. Isn't there, you call up and just say, we need help at the city of Mount Shasta. How does it work?
Well, currently we have an informal process. If the board chooses to assist the incorporated cities, then we would then implement, I would come back to the board with an actual fee, who then reviews the whether, to determine whether or not the benchmarks are being met, because there are certain benchmarks. And so if those benchmarks are met, then that is then approved at that level, and then the discussions occur in the center. So it's all over the map. And so again, it's a shelter ran approximately $11,000, and I'm not trying to put in required.
And are there services for residents?
Those that come into the centers, from what I understand, it can be anybody that shows up during those times that have been noticed. But I'll have her verify that.
Good morning, Susan Cervelli, Deputy Director for Social Services and Shelter Coordinator for Human Services. When we post a warming center, or the cities that request the warming center post, it is open to the community, any person that is in need. In the sense of the warming centers, the majority of our population that comes in could be classified as our. But it also depends on power situations in the local areas. If we have residents that come in because they do not have secondary or wood sources for their house. And for the cooling centers, it tends to be a general population when we've had to operate those. We're much fewer that we operate. Usually the county libraries and other facilities take on those daytime duties because they're already open. But we do see more of a senior population that perhaps don't have air conditioning, or just trying to get around town and need a cooling spot to stop in those situations.
So for instance, we don't go into, the city of Mount Shasta or the city of Weed and just say, we're setting up a warming or cooling center for you.
No.
Okay.
No.
It would require the cities coming to OES, I would imagine.
Correct. The informal process currently is that we would receive a direct request from the city itself, a representative from the member may be in charge at that time. And that request would go directly to Mr. Shinoni, who would then establish the weather system that we are experiencing to determine if the benchmarks are being met.
Okay. Thank you.
Correct.
I have a question. So looking at the past, I would say that none of the government buildings that have been utilized in the past are proper for this. They've required, technically, I would say, hazmat cleanup afterwards. Very inconvenient. There's potential access to health records. Something that I've been looking at is, I want solutions to this stuff. I'm looking long term. I know I spoke with City of Wairika. Looks like they have a church on board for temporary. But currently, one thing I'm looking at is with the Senate Bill 1, the mental health bill that was passed, there's a $6.4 billion bond posted for infrastructure. While I'd like to see a mental health and rehabilitation center, would this infrastructure bond be a possibility for developing some sort of mobile warming shelter as part of that system? That way, we're not coming out of pocket on it, but we're defeating an issue that this was designed for.
Correct. And we did have, at least I am aware of one warming center that was located at a county building. You're correct, there was some cleanup that was involved after post-center closure. With regards to, we can definitely look into what the viability is for a mobile warming and is mobile. So we can definitely take a look at that and research that piece.
In the county building, because we've already addressed that before, as far as housing people, etc.
There's a lot of different variants. I'll also defer to Ms. Burley if she'd like to add. 24/7 facility for adult and child protective services. We are 24 hours on call at any protective services. We may need to utilize our office for temporary location and assessment interviews and other things. Therefore, if we had the safety risk and confidentiality issues that come with that. The other issue is right now our mobile crisis is utilizing the Campus Drive unit 24 hours a day, and so there's a problem utilizing that building during business hours. So in the instance when we did have our small lobby area with our visitation program that comes in for child protective service late 8 a.m. So it really creates just a transitional issue specifically during the week. But
Okay. While we're talking about this, I would also about warming shelters, whether they were going to figure out other alternatives for this. We did discuss a mobile option. We did discuss
for his inspirational thinking outside the box, literally. Which would increase access for those in our homeless and unhoused areas and populations within some type of trailering situation, 18-wheeler with heating situations, those type of things. Obviously, there's liability insurance, heating, all those things to think about, but it did take away the burden of finding a would be easier, and those just those logistics. There's a heated, long discussion at COC meeting this last month, and I think it was productive. County building or a church that steps forward. Obviously, those are kind of when we use the Methodist Church, they generously open their doors on numerous occasions for us on warming centers. If storms are off the streets, they would not move their belongings if they are part of the unhoused population to get across town. So if we had some type of unit that could go out and assist the community or even travel throughout the night to provide fairly meant to be sleeping situations, it would perhaps help. So the city was.
Thank you.
Unincorporated areas, but can someone educate me on the
Why are you backing up? That is actually a fantastic question. So, and we have Trish Barbieri, the Director of Social Services, that may be able to answer that direct question.
I'm hoping so. I'm just returning after a 3-week vacation, and so please bear with me here if I seem a little bit scattered. But as you are all aware, workers, county employees, as well as city employees and other jurisdictions. And as a courtesy to the county HHSA, primarily behavioral health and social services, have assisted with the operation, implementation operation, maintaining, as Ms. Davis described, with the cooling centers. And I'll just clarify, As Mr. Valley mentioned, we don't call them shelters. Shelters are often full scope. We are mandated by disasters, but not centers. There's a difference, and so that's why I mentioned that it's really been a courtesy. We have never invoiced the city sort of time or service that's been provided. It is my opinion that the services that are provided at the cooling centers are not specialized services. There's no specialty to them. Oftentimes, we hear, social services, they do the emergency shelters. We do. And there's a specialty to that. And we do it in collaboration and conjunction with the American Red Cross. But when operating cooling centers or warming centers, there's no specialty to that whatsoever. Mr. Valley mentioned there's no overnight, or we don't put out any beds or things of that sort. We often will issue blankets, and we've had food donated and things of that sort. And the only way that we are able to fund it is to actually track the time that the employees spent there and charge it to our public assistance programs. And so we have our staff actually taking brochures and pamphlets and boards of different sorts to promote the programs that we, because that's what we're mandated to do. That is the service that we're mandated to provide. We don't have any sort of discretion in terms of utilizing our realignment funds any differently and outside of the scope of the programs that we administer. And so tying it to that work is really critical for it to be paid. As we all know, I'm not aware of any center or any adverse weather event where we've operated a cooling center or a warming center where a disaster has been proclaimed. Right? And so there's no opportunity for us to recoup our funding for our emergency response units set up for response systems, the first system that we're mandated to operate. Not only for all the reasons that I've mentioned, but also because of staffing issues. We seek volunteers, and we don't always get volunteers. You're asking staff who have already worked maybe a 10-hour day, an 8 or 10-hour day, to work a shift from, what are the shifts, Susan?
Midnight and midnight to 7 a.m.
And then they have the responsibility to go back to work the next day to do their regular job.
Right.
So it's a challenge for sure. It is a challenge.
So I understand your role. I'm still trying to sort out the city's role. And it's important to me to know before I would ever commit to additional county personnel or financial commitment to something like this. I want to know if I'm going to jump into somebody else's pool. I want to know what pool I'm jumping into. Basically, I don't think I do know that at this point. The other thing, from my perspective, is that I've never had a request personally or been reached out to one of the incorporated cities in my district for such a shelter. I know Mr. Shinoni and I have been working on some evacuation shelters for emergencies regarding natural disasters and that kind of thing.
Right.
Trying to use the Grange and those kind of things, and the feeling in general is we don't want a warming shelter here. We might do an emergency evacuation. What kind of services are articulated between the county and maybe the Creek Drive and Happy Camp? Wellness center down there, and I do know they do meals and maybe warm shelter things and that kind of thing too. Different situation down there, and it's also a county responsibility because it's not an incorporated city. So maybe we can talk sometime about that relationship down there as well.
And I can also review the individual cities' responsibilities. I know that, as mentioned, the city of Wairika have been having conversations with regards to their roles and responsibilities for the warming and cooling centers. And so I am not aware of a state mandate, unless Director
Well, it would help me because
but that's something we
governments are always looking for money. from somebody else. And before the county would fulfill that, I certainly want to know where those boundaries are.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. Brian Schoen, Director of Emergency Services. So to answer that question is basically its capabilities and what is overwhelmed. So standardized emergency management, a jurisdiction is overwhelmed or the resources have been burdened, then the next resource steps in, which would be the county. So one of the things that we have seen as throughout Siskiyou cooling shelter, and to be clear on that, the cooling shelters fires due to power safety shutoffs or due to funded our side of it through California Disaster Assistance Act through that have already used that. Warming shelters tend to be a little bit different in the sense of find the location that best suits the area. But again, it's based off of the jurisdictions to us, so we can't walk in and just like, and we've talked about this with local jurisdiction as well, I can't walk in during a disaster and say, hey, we're in charge now, unless it's requested by the local. I think that question that you asked, that so we're being asked without, there's a step being.
What's the thresholds?
So the threshold is the state of California and some of the other. For cooling, it's got to be 2 to 3 days of wet and cold. So wind chill, it's a matrix that we use. Cold is one thing, but it's got to be multiple cold for multiple days and multiple nights. With the inability wet and cold and wind chill, freezing, quick thermia. And then warm is multiple days without reprieve, morning into evening into daytime high temperatures.
Should have clarified that.
Yeah.
Is there a threshold on number of participants?
On how many folks are visiting?
You said a jurisdiction has to be over beyond your capacity.
Correct. And in my tenure, one other county or one other city request quickly decided that they were just going to use a local church instead.
Look at partnering. We're the ones, the county provides mental health services, social services. Think your water, sewer, and the admin. And so it's to me willing partners that want to partner with the city, and how do we develop criteria? How is that set up? I personally don't think county buildings are set up to be the centers. I think you need to address that location. For some reason it comes to mind, and I'm just using Wairika as the citizens of Tusmere, that's including the county. City of Mount Shasta is including the county. They say they live in the zip code or whatever. But why not partner with the fairgrounds? About that armory, why don't we set up we have to do something. Let's get people on board, and there is grant money out there through the state for homelessness and or other things. And remember, they close the highway, so I'm not worried about snow and these kind of things. We're talking about certain instances, the cooling things. I mean, that's a perfect location to have a cooling center. Why does it always have to be a county or a city? Let's get the community involved on that type of thing.
We've tried that.
Well, and then here's the other point. Cities are not staffed. We aren't well staffed. Best we can with what we got. And that may be, we can't do it at some point in time.
And so there has been the staffing. I know myself, I know, but it's got to be a buy-in from both.
And we have an aging population here. We don't have a lot of people that are willing, not productive. That's not helping the cause. Anyways, those are some thoughts on that, on the thing.
But is the power out? Because most residents, wood or gas or something, or cooling, they have some form of cooling. So are you talking
heaters? and they have that ability to continue themselves.
I guess let's cut to the chase. We're talking about the homeless population. We're not talking about
everyone else as the community that's open to this kind of thing.
Mr. Harris? No?
No,
So I think not just catering to the homeless population, but to eliminate panic situation of trying to create a plan in place for whether it's warming, cooling, have to have something in place. We have a plan.
don't we already have that?
We have a sheltering plan, yes.
Yeah.
We have an emergency
Through
operations.
We
OES.
have a sheltering plan. Centers, we don't have a formal adopted plan. And that is the goal of this discussion. So the board has a common thread of cooling centers and formalizing some speaking is that kind of direction. So, which helps us greatly. And it would be a situation, and then you just kind of go down that list of, recently we had a situation where, and so there's always that potential of, we may have the best wrong. I mean, we can definitely bring back again that plan. OES has created that plan, but bringing it back.
Or can supply.
Or can
supply.
supply,
Yes.
May I quickly?
From the county. Or not. So that's why we say.
You probably can't get there.
Mhm.
Or when Happy Camp has an ice storm, you can't get there.
So yes, my focus is the employees to watch for their welfare and their well-being. The county will always be able to provide staff, and that's responsibility of what shall be done and what may be provided. The two contrasting. If that is.
For instance, then it's.
Then they would not utilize that plan. Right.
You know, is all I can say.
There have been some centers where I believe city council.
The fires, Bowles, or Mill, to see if we ask for a cooling center, but you know, and I think all we provided was the generator potentially, I think, to keep that going. But short of that, I mean, no, that's problematic.
If I may, through the chair, I think that's where my thought is that they have to be a willing partner. It can't be an either or thing.
No.
And it has to be spelled out what we can, what we're capable. Sources could be, I don't know, the generator, the food, the water, whatever. I don't think we are ever going to have dedicated staff that we say, okay, we're just going to ship in a dozen people. That's never going to happen.
No.
So
It can't.
It's got to be defined of what we are going to do, what we can partner with and capable of, and clearly defined.
If I may, one of the limiting factors that we have seen across has been police presence. So we do in the ability to keep everone safe, including our employees, the members of the community. Having police presence is always at first we did use the sheriff until we had that buy-in, and then the jurisdictions have used police. But one of the concerns that is the overtime, and then having just somebody, you're literally just sitting for 8 to 10 hours. That's so, and if that is the last one that we had, we couldn't get a police presence, so we called it because I'm not willing to.
And that is a
Exactly
public,
what I was going to say.
it is a public safety issue as well as our own employee safety issue.
So, I mean, it doesn't make sense to send, social service.
That, police presence that is supplied by or administered by.
That would be one of the limiting factors is law enforcement.
Duly noted.
What's the,
Well, I believe if I can just read the takeaways, is that we will go, staff will go back to the table and review the plan and have it massaged to include very clear directives as the process, the steps, the requirements, not only from the county, but for the requesting city, and then bring that back to the board for review and for adoption. If that is sufficient for the board, then that is the direction that we will head.
nodding heads?
Nodding heads?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Don't
I
spend
appreciate
years
it.
on it, though.
Yeah.
Oh, no. But thank you very much for your time.
Great. When did you need a quick break before?
Yes, I'd love a break.
Okay, short break. 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
You're the chair, make it an hour.
There we go.
No.